Prisons are places of confinement, designed to isolate individuals from society as a consequence of their actions. Yet, within this spectrum of correctional facilities, there exist prisons that defy conventional understanding, where survival becomes the primary objective. These are the prisons that have earned a chilling reputation as the craziest on earth. Overcrowding, violence, disease, and psychological torment become the norm, pushing inmates and guards alike to their limits. From the anarchic violence of Venezuelan prisons to the stark isolation of solitary confinement in the United States, we will journey into the heart of these extreme environments. Prepare to be confronted by the raw realities of life and death within these walls, where every day is a fight for survival. La Sabaneta, located in Venezuela, is synonymous with brutality, overcrowding, and the collapse of basic human decency. Built to house a fraction of its actual inmate population, La Sabaneta is a stark example of a penitentiary system pushed to its breaking point. Within its overcrowded cells and corridors, violence is an ingrained aspect of daily life. Gangs rule through intimidation and force, their control extending over every aspect of the prison's ecosystem. Corruption flourishes, with bribes and favors becoming the currency of survival. Disease runs rampant, fueled by inadequate sanitation and limited access to medical care. La Sabaneta stands as a harrowing testament to the consequences of neglecting a nation's prison system. San Pedro Prison in Bolivia presents a different yet equally unsettling reality. Here, the authorities have relinquished much of their control, allowing the inmates to establish their own internal society. Inmates pay for their accommodation, with cell prices varying depending on size, location, and amenities. The prison operates its own internal economy, with inmates engaging in various trades and businesses to generate income. However, this apparent self-governance masks a darker underbelly. Drug use is rampant, and violence, often fueled by gang rivalries, is a constant threat. San Pedro highlights the potential for exploitation and violence when law enforcement takes a back seat. Gitarama Central Prison in Rwanda stands as a chilling testament to the human cost of overcrowding. Originally built to accommodate a fraction of its current population, the prison has become a sea of humanity. The sheer density of bodies creates an oppressive atmosphere where basic necessities like food, water, and even breathing space are in short supply. Disease spreads rapidly in the overcrowded and unsanitary environment, with limited access to medical care exacerbating the suffering. The psychological toll of such extreme confinement is immeasurable. Deprived of basic needs and faced with the constant struggle for survival, inmates in Gitarama are pushed to the limits of their endurance. Gitarama Central Prison stands as a stark reminder of the urgent need for prison reform and the importance of upholding basic human rights. Rikers Island, a sprawling jail complex in New York City, has gained notoriety as one of America's most infamous correctional facilities. Located on an island in the East River, it houses thousands of inmates, many of whom are there for non-violent offenses or are simply awaiting trial. Plagued by decades of neglect, violence, and corruption, Rikers Island stands as a stark example of the systemic failures that continue to plague the American justice system. The infrastructure is crumbling, with many buildings in severe disrepair, reflecting the lack of investment and care. Within its walls, inmates, many of whom are awaiting trial and presumed innocent, are subjected to brutal conditions. Overcrowding is rampant, with cells often holding more inmates than they were designed for, leading to inhumane living conditions. Violence, often perpetrated by both inmates and guards, is a fact of life, leaving many physically and psychologically scarred. The lack of adequate supervision and the high-tension environment contribute to frequent outbreaks of violence. Gangs exert significant control within the prison, further eroding the already tenuous grip of authorities. These gangs often dictate the daily lives of inmates, creating a dangerous and volatile atmosphere. Despite efforts to implement reforms, the jail complex remains a dangerous and often deadly environment. Initiatives aimed at rehabilitation and reducing violence have had limited success, hindered by the deep-rooted issues within the system. Rikers Island stands as a stain on the conscience of America, a stark reminder of the urgent need for criminal justice reform. The ongoing protests and calls for change highlight the public's growing awareness and demand for a more just and humane system. El Rodeo, a sprawling prison complex in Venezuela, has become synonymous with anarchy and violence. This notorious facility, located on the outskirts of Caracas, is a microcosm of the broader issues plaguing the country. Within its walls, inmates, many of whom are armed, operate with virtual impunity, their lives governed by a brutal code of survival. The prison is a battleground where the strongest and most ruthless rise to power, while the weak are left to fend for themselves. The Venezuelan government's control over El Rodeo is tenuous at best, with prison officials often turning a blind eye to the violence and chaos. Corruption and fear have paralyzed the authorities, rendering them ineffective in maintaining order. Gangs rule El Rodeo, their power cemented through violence and intimidation. These gangs have established a hierarchy that mirrors the outside world, with leaders who command respect and obedience through fear. They control access to food, water, and other essential supplies, creating a system where survival depends on allegiance and obedience. The scarcity of resources exacerbates tensions, leading to frequent clashes among inmates. Riots erupt with alarming frequency, leaving scores dead and injured. These violent outbreaks are a grim reminder of the constant state of unrest within the prison walls. El Rodeo stands as a harrowing testament to the human cost of societal breakdown and the failure of institutions tasked with upholding justice and order. The dilapidated conditions and pervasive sense of despair reflect the broader collapse of social structures in Venezuela. It is a place where hope goes to die, a stark reminder of the fragility of civilization in the face of unchecked violence and despair. The stories from within these walls serve as a chilling warning of what happens when law and order disintegrate. ADX Florence, a Supermax prison located in Colorado, stands as a chilling example of the psychological toll of extreme isolation. Often referred to as the Alcatraz of the Rockies, ADX Florence houses some of America's most dangerous criminals. Life at ADX Florence is defined by isolation. Inmates spend up to 23 hours a day confined to their cells, small concrete boxes with minimal human contact. The psychological effects of such prolonged isolation can be devastating. Inmates at ADX Florence have reported experiencing depression, anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, and suicidal thoughts. Critics argue that such extreme isolation amounts to torture, causing irreparable harm to the mental health of those subjected to it. ADX Florence raises profound questions about the limits of punishment and the psychological impact of prolonged isolation. Black Beach Prison, located on the island nation of Equatorial Guinea, has earned international notoriety for its brutal conditions and human rights abuses. Operated by the authoritarian regime of President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, Black Beach has become a symbol of oppression and the suppression of dissent. Within its walls, political prisoners, accused criminals, and even those suspected of opposing the regime are subjected to horrific treatment. Torture is reportedly commonplace, with inmates subjected to beatings, electrocution, and other forms of physical and psychological abuse. Food and water are scarce, and medical care is virtually non-existent. The conditions at Black Beach are so dire that many inmates do not survive their sentences. Black Beach stands as a stark indictment of the Obiang regime and its disregard for human rights. Our exploration of some of the world's craziest prisons has taken us on a harrowing journey into the darkest corners of the human experience. These institutions, often hidden from the public eye, reveal the stark realities faced by those who live behind bars. The stories we have uncovered are not just about confinement, but about the human spirit's struggle to survive in the face of overwhelming adversity. We have witnessed the depths of despair to which individuals can be subjected when deprived of their basic needs and fundamental rights. The overcrowded cells, the lack of medical care, and the inhumane treatment are not just failures of the prison system, but failures of society as a whole. These images are a stark reminder of the urgent need for change. These prisons serve as stark reminders of the importance of upholding human rights, even within the context of punishment and incarceration. The presence of human rights posters and the rare instances of humane interaction between guards and inmates show that there is hope for a better system. A system where justice is not just about punishment, but about fairness and rehabilitation. They highlight the need for criminal justice reform, for systems that prioritize rehabilitation and reintegration, rather than retribution and despair. Programs that offer education and vocational training are crucial in helping inmates rebuild their lives. These initiatives not only benefit the individuals but also the communities they return to, reducing recidivism and promoting social harmony. The conditions within these institutions are a reflection not only of the individuals incarcerated within their walls, but also of the societies that allow such conditions to persist. Community protests and advocacy for better prison conditions are essential in driving the change needed to transform these places from centers of despair to beacons of hope. As we conclude our exploration, we are left with a profound sense of unease and a renewed commitment to advocating for justice, fairness, and the inherent dignity of all human beings. The reflections of inmates and the passionate voices of advocates remind us that the fight for justice is ongoing and that every effort counts. The stories of these prisons, as disturbing as they may be, serve as a call to action, a reminder that we must never turn a blind eye to suffering, regardless of where it occurs or who it afflicts. Each story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and a plea for a more just and compassionate world. Let us take these lessons to heart and work towards a future where justice and humanity go hand in hand.